Keir Starmer has praised Boris Johnson for his efforts to level up Britain. The Labour leader said that the former PM had the right idea and accused Rishi Sunak of killing the policy.
Now, Sir Keir is launching his party's local election campaign today, where he will pledge to tackle, I don't know what this means, alienation and powerlessness across much of the country.
Well, we've got two women here who could probably tell us what it means.
I'm outnumbered this morning. There's women
are,
everywhere.
As you should be.
Including my nemesis is in the building, in black, like a black widowed spider.
I think that's you. Well, TalkTV reporter Victoria Innes is back with us, and we're also joined by political correspondent at Politics Joe, Ava Santina.
Twice in 1 week, mate. You must be short of cash.
I know, yeah. I'm exhausted. Stop calling me.
I can't get over it. Well, you know what it is.
Vic, we're going to start with you. Starmer praising Boris Johnson. What on earth has happened?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, but I think there is, some solid thinking behind it. Obviously, Labour are trying to win back all of those 2019 voters who voted for Boris Johnson, who liked Boris Johnson, and who liked his policy of levelling up. And Labour and Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, are essentially saying, look, we see what he was trying to do. The backbone of the policy was good. He promised you X, Y, and Z. It was a good idea in theory, but he then handed over to Rishi Sunak, who just can't deliver it.
But it is really interesting, just to bring Ava in, and I appreciate what you're saying, Vic, but Ava, on a serious note for a minute, right? 2019, the Labour Party, Corbyn, you fast forward 4.5 years. Last week, Rachel Reeves quoted Margaret Thatcher. Today, Keir Starmer quoting Boris Johnson. This is a party that has not only parked its tanks on the Tory lawn, it's taken over their headquarters. Some of the language is extraordinary for a party that's changed so much in 4 years, don't you think?
Well, the tactics are so obvious, I don't even think it needs much analysis, right? That they're appealing to a base that they feel that they lost in 2019 and, they're sort of warding off attacks. So Rishi Sunak, during Prime Minister's questions, he regularly would, call Keir Starmer a socialist. And the best way to ward that off is to say that your economic policy is similar to Margaret Thatcher's. It's so obvious. I don't even know how to analyse that for you.
Is it? Do they need to do this? Here's my question, Vic. Does the Labour Party in the position it is, does it need to do anything more than just exist? Does it actually need to say anything because the Tories are in such chaos?
Well, arguably not. I mean, arguably, all of the votes for Labour are not necessarily a vote for Labour and for Keir Starmer. They are a vote against Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party. So, most of the polling would suggest that whatever Labour does, they are still going to get those votes anyway. And whatever Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives do, it's not going to make a difference. But the problem is that Keir Starmer has got a big problem once he gets into power, because there are a lot of those 2019 voters, those red wall predominantly voters, who do not like Keir Starmer and do not like the Labour Party, and the satisfaction there is very low. So, yes, Labour may win when it comes to a general election, whenever that may be, but after that they have got an uphill struggle to convince people that there is optimism for the future and that the Labour Party has got their backs and is going to deliver for them.
Couldn't agree more.
And Ava, Starmer's due to launch the Labour Party's local election campaign later today. We can't say where, but it will be in the West Midlands somewhere. We won't mention where it is, Jeremy. Do not worry.
Why can't we say
No,
that?
don't. Shut, I get stressed. Shh. We can't say. I got told not to say. And you know what I'm like? I'll say it, and then everything will go wrong.
Yeah.
Don't say.
OK.
Ava, how will a local election campaign differ to a general election campaign?
Well, this is going to be a tough set of elections, I think, for the Labour Party, because, quite a few Labour councils around the country have either declared bankruptcy or are, experiencing significant financial difficulty. So Labour are going to be looking at this, hoping to, sort of prove that they'll be able to pick up a few more seats in the general election. But West Midlands, where the election is, I won't go into detail about where it is, where the campaign launches, but it's in the West Midlands, because there are also several mayors who are up for election. And Andy Street is the very popular Tory mayor who is currently sitting, and there are some in the Labour Party who would love to dislodge him. It's really, really unlikely, though. He really is quite popular, particularly because he's rather centrist.
On a wider scale, and throwing out what we throw out, but will people vote? One of the things that we've talked about a lot is that I think people are so fed up with all politicians and what's going on in the country. There is an increased apathy. Does that show itself more at local elections than national ones?
Well, particularly with the mayor elections, that's something that Sadiq Khan and his team are really concerned about, because, in London, it's pretty much a two-horse race between him and the Conservative candidate, Susan Hall. Now, if you've been paying much attention to that campaign, Susan Susan Hall might not be the woman that every Londoner would like to lead you. But, you know, the big concern that the Sadiq Khan's team have is apathy. People will go, look, it's going to be a Labour mayor. Why on earth would I turn up to vote in the first place?
And that's always the problem, isn't it, in elections? If you're that far ahead that people go, do you know what, I won't bother. Right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, you know, particularly with local elections as well, if you're really fed up with the council and you're not thinking, you know, maybe the Conservatives will do better, then you might not turn out to vote at all. But also in council elections, you have a much broader choice of candidates. There are a lot of independent candidates that stand. A lot of the time they stand on one mandate, so they might stand against planning reform. And people going to vote for them actually splits the vote and it reduces the, you know, the big major parties, what majority they might have.
Do you think most people even know who runs their council, whether their council is Labour or Tory run?
I think people do. It depends on the area, but I think people do normally know who their local candidate is, and a lot of people feel strongly either way for their local candidate. A lot of them think, you know, whether there's someone who delivers a lot for the local area or whether there's someone who doesn't deliver. I think
even in local elections,
I actually disagree with that. I'm not being difficult at all. I'll tell you why I disagree with it, because I think that people look at a local election and they base it entirely what's going on nationally. I really do. And I've never met a local candidate, only because I do this job. If I was voting, I would be voting on what I think is going to happen.
I think it depends as well if it's a big character. I mean, I think if there's a big local character
that's true.
that everybody knows, who's very involved in the community, then people will know him. But obviously, if that's not the case, then.
And just before we move on to another topic, the full list of candidates who are running to become Mayor of London are Cheyenne Batra for the Independents, Rob Blackie for the Liberal Democrats, Natalie Campbell for the Independent, Howard Cox for Reform UK, Amy Gallagher for SDP, Zoe Garbett for the Green Party, Taran Galati for the Independent, Susan Hall for the Conservative Party, Sadiq Khan for the Labour Party, and Andreas Mickley for the Independent. Who's running as an Independent, sorry.
7:10, can I bring it on to from local elections to the national scale? Rumours that certain people in his inner circle, Ava, are saying to Rishi Sunak, go in the summer. Now, you and I probably wouldn't agree on all things, but we'll probably agree on this. This country is sleepwalking towards this general election. It almost seems inevitable, right? It's not going to make any difference when he calls it, is it?
I think we've been having this conversation now for too long, and you know the honest truth of it is that Rishi Sunak actually doesn't know when to call the election. They actually haven't made a decision, and the second that there's a tiny bit of conversation, one of the special advisors who sit around Rishi Sunak leaks it to the papers. You know, and a lot of the time this is actually being leaked by backbench Tory MPs because they're trying to sort of focus group the country and to see if that date would be palpable or palatable to the rest of the country. It's probably come from I know exactly who it's come from, but it's come from a backbench Tory MP who really wouldn't actually have a clue, to be honest. He would not be in the inner sanctum.
Don't name them. I'll end up having to read every Tory candidate's name out. On that note, Ava, Tim Montgomery, a prominent Tory advisor, said that a source in number 10 had told him that Rishi Sunak was openly saying to advisors in Downing Street, I'm not very good at this. Why isn't anything happening?
What?
Yes.
That's so awful.
Of a Prime Minister, I'm cringing.
But you see, you and I would usually disagree. I actually, Vic, I don't think he has been that great. I think he's flattered to deceive. I don't think he's proven himself to be that competent. I really don't.
But what do you actually want him to do? Because, you know, the problem that the Conservatives have got at the moment is they're plagued by short-termism, and the reason that they're plagued by that is because they know there's an election around the corner.
After Boris Johnson and Liz, they talked about having a steady hand on the tiller. They talked about, somebody who was bank manager Lee, right? And he walked up Downing Street and he said this, that and the other, and I've said this a million times. Then he employed Gavin Williamson, he did a deal with Suella Braverman. He made these promises that haven't happened. And I think people are looking at it and going, you've actually taken this party back. That's what I think.
Well, we're stagnating, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're sort of just waiting. We're waiting for this election, and there's going to be no actual solid policy until then. I think the best thing that we're going to get is probably a ban on smoking for, people who are under 15.
Who are too young to vote anyway.
Do you know what I mean?
There we go. Well, thank you so much to Victoria Innes and Ava Santina from Politics Joe.
Thanks,
thank you both.